In this performance review of Hitman World of Assassination on iPhone 17 Pro, we're going to take a look at how the game looks and runs on the various graphical options available to the user. I'm going to assume that you're already familiar with the game and get straight into the performance review after a few housekeeping things that I think are worth mentioning. The base game install size comes in at just over 15GB with location downloads varying between 2 to 4GB each. The touch controls seem to have been well thought out with key inputs on screen at all times and contextually activated prompts for the other interactions. The game also has controller support for PlayStation DualSense and Xbox controllers, which are much easier to use, are more responsive and eliminate the display of on-screen controls. Onto the graphics and performance. There are 4 settings which the player can change: frame rate, metal effects super sampling on or off, the quality level of temporal metal effects if turned on, and reflection quality. I'm going to go through each setting in turn, showing what effect they have on the game's visuals and performance, and will give my suggested settings at the end. Starting with the frame rate setting, which in actual fact may as well not be there, as despite the option for 30, 40 and 60 frames per second options, the game is limited to 30 FPS regardless of which option you select. As much as this disappointed me at first, I quickly realised looking at the performance metrics that only really 30 and to push 40 would be attainable, so I think capping to 30 FPS makes more sense. With metal effects turned off and reflections set to low, the game renders at 1311 by 603. In this configuration the game appears rather blurry, low resolution, and appears as if there's a filter of haze across the screen, or maybe that's just my exaggeration. For all intents and purposes the game locks to 30 FPS with these settings. To my eyes, when turning on the spatial variant of metal effects, there appears to be no difference to the game's image quality. This is supported by the metrics, which shows that spatial metal effects seems to be active even when the setting is turned off. Switching to temporal metal effects on the performance quality setting keeps the same base resolution of 1311 by 603, but provides a perceptually higher resolution image that, while a bit soft, looks much more clean and much more detailed as a result. The game locks to 30 FPS with these settings. Using the balance mode, we see an increase to the base resolution of 1704 by 784. This increase to the base rendering resolution leads to a less soft, more sharp image. The iPhone 17 Pro remains locked to 30 FPS even with the highest setting of reflections on, but more on that in a bit. I just want to add the caveat that it is possible to drop the frame rate to around 28 FPS under select circumstances, but the overwhelming majority of the time it is locked to 30 FPS. Finally, the quality mode, which boosts the base rendering resolution up to 2098 by 965. While this does provide a little boost to image quality, on the iPhone screen it's a minor increase at best. The trade-off is the iPhone 17 Pro begins to struggle and averages between 24 to 28 FPS. For the best visuals and performance, I suggest using the balanced mode. Now on to reflections. I wanted to talk about reflections in isolation as they exhibit some rather odd behaviour at the moment. With reflections turned off, we're left with a highly inaccurate approximation of a reflection that looks pretty crap. As I've shown through the video, image quality is better when using temporal metal effects, but turning reflections on at any quality level in conjunction with any setting of temporal metal effects leads to a bizarre shimmering reflection that's just simply not nice to look at. The reflection setting also affects floor reflections. Unlike mirror reflections, these seem to render properly and look pretty good. If we turn metal effects off, it's possible to scale reflection quality as normal and get a decent result, but the rest of the image looks much worse as a result. I ended up using the high reflection quality as I could use this setting with balanced metal effects and get a locked 30 FPS most of the time. This provided a much better floor reflection even if the mirror reflections still suck. To give context to how the iPhone 17 Pro performs, I want to give a quick comparison to the iPhone 15 Pro and PS5 Pro. The iPhone 15 Pro is the weakest compatible device, and even on the performance mode of metal effects, struggles to hit 30 FPS during the initial entrance of the Paris level. The frame rate then stabilises to a locked 30 FPS and can be maintained for longer periods, providing you avoid certain effects like smoke, busy areas, and stay in stealth. Breaking stealth and entering combat can easily drop the frame rate down into the low 20s even with no visible action on screen. The iPhone 15 Pro can fluctuate in frame rate for many reasons, dropping as low as 12 FPS while getting Helmut Kruger makeup done of all things. I think this should give you a pretty good idea that the iPhone 15 Pro can turn in a reasonable performance, but it's highly susceptible to jump off a cliff when it comes to frame rate. The iPhone 17 Pro by comparison is able to render the game at a high resolution with the highest reflection quality enabled, locking to 30 FPS for 99% of the time. Finally, I wanted to compare to the PS5 Pro, so it was possible to see the areas in which the iOS version felt cut back compared to the console experience. The game is PS5 Pro enhanced, so it's significantly more detail-rich and runs at 60 FPS. However, the iPhone 17 Pro does a really good job at giving you a smooth, clean, and very playable Hitman experience on the go. If you're interested in playing the game on iOS after this review, the full game price has been reduced to £60 from the initial ask of £70. You can also purchase individual locations for £3 each, as I did for this review. I hope you found this video useful, and thank you for watching.